Mishmash! Kitbash Corner!
Yeah, today in the Kitbash Corner series, I am making some of my favorite Space Marines I've ever made. Now, I know a lot of you think that Primaris Marines are boring, and that Space Marines in general are boring, but we're going to make them better by making them firstborns. That's right, the Marines that we wanted to be replaced 8 years ago to be more proportional are now the ones that I personally think are better in every way.
Oh, boomers again, making fun of Primaris Marines, get over it.
You know what, buddy? I'm surprised you don't like Firstborn. I would think that a character with tiny short legs and stumpy arms and a big eggy head would make you feel immersed.
You're a big stupid club hand for gooning crazy style.
I don't know why I'm feeling so spicy today, but you know what? I'm gonna keep up this energy. I like it. Anyway, the actual point of this video is I decided to take some Mark 6 Corvus legs and simply kitbash them with the Firstborn kits. But before we get into all that kitbashing goodness, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, share it with a friend, and if you really dig it, consider becoming a channel member. For just $3 a month, you get to see my videos early, and for $5, you get access to a weekly Q&A stream, in which I'll showcase your minis. You also get access to exclusive roles and channels within the Mishmash Discord, and it just helps a guy do his dream job. Huge thank you to the channel members, you guys are amazing. And if you want to help me even further, as well as help yourself to amazing hobby products, you can use my affiliate links in the description for products that I use on the channel, and you can use my discount codes to get a good price on them. Everything ranging from brushes to minis to airbrushes. But enough of the promotional stuff, let's get into the kit bashing. Now, to give a little bit more detail on what I alluded to earlier, the way that I'm going to be kit bashing these models is by using the Mark 6 Corvus bodies, but I'm snipping away at the torsos, leaving me with just the more well-proportioned legs. The thing is the Horus Heresy models are actually pretty well-proportioned overall. Despite the heads being a little shrimpy for my taste, I think they are a perfect representation of what I would like to see out of a newer Mark 7 kit, if that ever does happen. Being that the Firstborn tactical box is basically a 1-to-1 in terms of torso size, these fit rather seamlessly. And if you want to make an army of Firstborns, well, I would probably suggest you just use the Firstborn boxes. I feel like this is only really viable if you have a lot of excess Marines, and I have a lot of excess Marines and old bits that I've saved over the years. So, don't take this as something that you need to do. This is just a fun little kit bash showcase. Now, I ended up actually making a couple Marines prior to this video, and that's kind of what inspired the rest of the figures. Some of the footage is just not present because I did this off screen. So, the missile launcher Marine is not something that I ended up actually filming, aside from showing you here that this is basically what you can expect. But now with the little, I guess, prelude out of the way, let's get to the actual individual kit bashing. To start super basic bitch, I just took an M6 Corvus body, and I actually didn't even kit bash this one. This is more or less a test. But as you can see, simply adding a Mark 7 helmet just looks really cool. That's all I really had to do. Except for the obvious, he doesn't have the classic Aquila. However, just to keep things a little in line with the old Firstborn stuff, I decided to clip free one of the hands from the Firstborn kits, and I armed him with a good old melt-a-gun. Oddly enough, though I don't really care for a lot of the Primaris new weapons in terms of their look and design, I actually don't mind the new melt-a-guns all too much, but I'm still a sucker for the classic look. You're always gonna like what you grew up with a little bit better to some degree. And for this, I still prefer the old melt-a-guns. Only issue is I did need to use a little bit of sprue goo to keep things in place and actually fit it in properly, but after applying that, it was good as gold. Then for his pauldrons, I simply gave him a couple of Primaris ones because, at the end of the day, they're actually not that different from the Firstborn ones. I do like the Firstborn nodules a little bit better, but I do think this looks fine. And to give him a power pack, I gave him a classic Mark 7. This is as simple as it gets, but I think it looks really good, and after priming, it's pretty evident that it's exactly what I wanted these guys to look like. After reading Imperial Armor for the Bad Ab War video, yes, I'm still working on it, it's very close, I've now appreciated the Firstborn stuff all the more because it's not just the look and design, it was the art and the love that was put into these. You don't see this as often with Primaris, and there's almost a point where I can say that I can't even fully fault Primaris for this. It's just a lot of little things, there's just more love put into these older books, and I don't know how else to explain it. But before I get too sentimental, let's get to the next figure. Another thing I really miss about the older Marines is I just really love the old Assault Marines. More directly, their old power packs, or jump packs rather. I just love how gigantic and disproportionate they are, and I think that's what really makes me fall in love with these. It's over the top, it's goofy, and I love it for that. Although the remaining jump pack I had just a tiny bit of super glue in it, so it did not adhere nicely, and yeah. This took like 3.5 minutes to actually glue on fully. Now for his melee weapon, I actually had a pre-built Mark 6 arm with a firstborn chainsword, and I simply added on some of the pauldrons from the Hellblaster's kit. I really like just the little extra detail of the skulls, so I'm gonna give a couple extra points to Primaris for this, because at the end of the day, one thing that they changed that I didn't mind was the pauldrons. Even though I do love the little nodules, I don't mind having a nice clean pauldron for decoration and decals. For his right arm, I would give him again a Mark 6 arm, and the same pauldron just to keep things a little in line. As for his firearm, I actually couldn't find any old classic bolt pistols. I'm sure I have plenty, but I just didn't find any in the bits bins that I had. So, because I love playing the Assault class in Space Marine 1 with a bolter, I decided to give him a classic bolter. This is a little heavy and it did kinda sag because of the Tamiya, but after shifting things in place, it looked pretty damn good, and I'm really happy with how it turned out overall. Now for his melon, I ended up giving him a classic Corvus melon. None of the shrimpy ones from the Horus Heresy line. I actually really don't hate these, they're just a little eggy. But I've always liked the look of Assault Marines with beaky helms. And for a final little decoration besides some extra grenades, I decided to use this old little tabard thing that I clearly carved ages ago, and it actually fit quite well. I just had to push it into place using my hobby knife with a little bit of Tamiya, and it was a great fit. I didn't really think I needed to do anything else beyond this, but I did like how it looked because it really invokes that classic Gregorian monk look that I love for old Space Marines. I am kinda sad that I never did fully pick up an extra case of the old Assault Marines, and I honestly see no reason why. I guess I could pick up the Vanguard Veterans, but it's not the same as the classic one. I just like having bits that are a little less detailed. But hey, I really like how this figure looks. I don't want to be too melancholy. This is kind of everything I could possibly want out of an old Assault Marine, and I'm quite excited to figure out a paint scheme for him. Now our next figure is kind of a weird techie figure. I didn't really know what to do with this one. It has a little bit of an Iron Handsy flavor to it, but to start him out, I ended up using one of the Auspex arms from the Space Marine Adventures kit. You know that little Barnes & Noble box you see every once in a while? 25 bucks? It actually has some really great firstborn bits, especially if you like the push fits. And I'm just a sucker for Auspex, just little details that I love. For his right arm, I ended up using one from the Deathwatch kit, just to keep in line with the techie look. I guess I'm just always prone to wanting to make another Sons of Medusa figure, so maybe that's what this will be. But, I don't know. For his bolt gun, I ended up just using one from the Deathwatch kit. I just liked how short it looked, and because we're already going for a tech theme, I felt it was befitting. This one is a little bit more simplistic, if you can't tell. For his pauldron, I ended up using a classic pauldron. Mostly because I just wanted to use it for, I guess, a chapter badge. The other one is a little bit more encased, so this gives me a little bit more room to work with. For his power pack, I ended up using a Corvus power pack. I don't know why I did this. I just think it was kind of a fun little extra detail, mostly because I love mission and mashin' and all my little Space Marine bits. Cheesy pun aside, I always liked when Space Marines had kind of amalgamation of different armor types. It's a good world-building element. They don't have all the bits and parts to make full armor sets. They have to use what they can get. As for his helmet, I ended up just using one of the Mark 7 helmets. This one having a nice little tack light. It's nothing super spicy, we're going rather bland today, but I think this will be really fun to paint up. If you haven't guessed by this point, I'm actually not sure how I want to paint these guys up. I don't know if I want to do a cohesive unit, or just paint each of them individually and do a different chapter for each figure. Something for extra content, I don't know. A little bit of comment bait. If you have any chapters you want to see me paint, leave them in the comments. I definitely always like going off of these anyway. Well, I got a paint review that I gotta do soon, so this is a good opportunity. Now for the next figure. This is my favorite, undoubtedly, this is my favorite. I freaking love Apothecaries. For this Apothecary Marine, I decided to use the Errant chest piece, and I'm using the Narthecium from the Dark Angels bike kit. By the way, if you want a Kitbash and Apothecary, primo kit. And if you're into Dark Angels, I'm kinda meh on him. For his right arm, I ended up using one from the Mark II set. I like the bulkiness of this arm. I really like this arm in particular because it has a lot of detail, but it's not too bulky. One downside of the firstborn arms is they're almost a little too chunky and it ends up looking a little weird. For his pistol, I decided to give him a classic plasma pistol. Again, couldn't find any bolt pistols, but I love plasma anyway. With the Tamiya still adhered, I could shift this into place for a good old pointing pose. I mean, if he has his weapon at the side, might as well shoot. Now for his power pack, I'm yet again using a bit from the Dark Angel's bike kit, as they have a perfect power pack for an Apothecary. The main way to get Apothecaries back in the day was the command squad, but for whatever reason, this one just has so many better bits. Already the pose is taking shape, and I just love this figure. Now for his pauldrons, I ended up using the Mark II pauldrons as I just kinda liked a little decoration at the studs. It feels a little bit more in line with a more specialized unit. I don't really think it matters which pauldrons I used. I could have used the classic ones and it would still look cool. But for some reason, I just really love how turtle shelly this guy looks. The bulkiness, it's that classic firstborn look. I know a lot of people complain about this kind of thing, but I personally love it. It's exactly what I want out of my Marines. I think cartooniness and things with more character rather than direct detail are just something that I love better. I think it's fun to paint something where you have to use your imagination and skill to fill in the blanks. Now, I wasn't sure what to do for his helmet because I did have a classic Apothecary helm, but it was caked in paint and I didn't want to deal with that. So I ended up using one from the Primaris Black Templars kit, and I would simply sand down the Iron Cross. It looks slightly dented and lumpy, but I always like having a little bit of battle damage to my Marines anyway, so it doesn't really bother me. Also, it kind of gives me a bit of a knightly look. It is a little different, being that it isn't the classic Vader helm, but I like how this looks overall. It'd be fun to paint this guy as maybe a Howling Griffin, or maybe something more knightly, maybe Fire Angels, who knows. And though I could call it good here, everything is basically what I want it to be. I still had some extra bits from the Dark Angels kit, and I ended up using the little tack pad on the right side, and I would use the little Apothecary vials on the back portion. I wanted to have it more towards the torso, but the Narthecium, or Narthecium, however it's pronounced, was a little too bulky for me to fit it in nicely, so kinda gluing it on his ass was the only option I really had. Though I don't really mind it too much. It's extra detail and adds more visual interest to the back. All in all, I am incredibly happy with this figure. I could sim for Apothecaries all day, it is such a great unit in 40k, and I love painting white armor. Dirtied and battle-damaged white armor. I don't like painting clean white armor. Again, could be a fun little extra video I put out in the background, who knows. But for the final figure, I decided to make a firstborn veteran. This was kind of a fun one to work on, as I ended up using a torso that I've been wanting to use for ages, but I never had a proper use for it. This being the Aquila chest piece from the old Sternguard kit. I've been waiting actual years to use this piece, and I'm really excited to paint the metallics. But to arm our veteran, I decided to use the Power Fist from the old Command Squad. I always liked this one. With all the eagle bits I ended up adding to this figure, I could paint him as like a loyalist Emperor's Children or something. It'd be fun. And for his right arm, I ended up using the knightly looking ones from the Dark Angel's bike squad. And to give him an actual weapon, I ended up using a Stormbolter. This is also from the old Command Squad. I believe anyway. Believe anyway? Can't remember if the Sternguard kit also had the more narrow magazines. I don't know. I'm actually curious. Tell me in the comments. For his pauldron, I ended up using yet another Eagle and Aquila bits from the Sternguard kit. I'm gonna be real with you, I've been wanting to use all three of these bits for ages now, so to have it all in one figure, cannot allow myself to paint this improperly. For his power pack, I ended up using one from the Deathwatch kit, with a lot of the bits scraped off. This was very clearly in the bottom of my bits bin, but I thought it would be kind of fun to use. The tactical Auspex as well as the Inquisition symbol is completely shaved off, so there's some free spaces for me to put decals on if I wish to. For his other pauldron, I decided to use yet another Mark II, mostly because I was kind of indecisive on what I wanted to use. I did have some other Sternguard bits, but I think I was just excited to use this one because it would give me a lot more area to apply a decal if I wish to. I might remove this in the future depending on how I feel. Though I don't really see any reason to. I like how bulky these pauldrons are. The only issue I really see with this figure is there's not a lot of detail on the lower end. Maybe I'll add some stuff in the future too. But for the last bit, I ended up giving him a Mark 8 helmet. A lot of my old Sternguard helmets have been used in the Bad Ab War Kitbash, and I just really like how this helmet looks overall. It's one of my favorites, so I thought it would be a good fit, and it does kind of balance out the more decorative elements with the more tactical elements. With that final detail, our Sternguard veteran is complete, and so is the rest of our kit. I am really happy with how these guys turned out. I especially love the Apothecary if it's not obvious by this point, but all of them carry elements of an aesthetic that I really fell in love with to begin with when I got into Warhammer. I really got into Warhammer around the beginning of 7th edition, so this is kind of what I grew up with in terms of my hobby experience. This is what made me love the series as a whole. And of course my Primaris hate is just a little bit hammy. I still think there's a lot of elements that they lack that make Firstborn such a great design. The amalgamation of different armor types meshed into one figure. And to be as fair as possible, the new Space Wolves really are a great step in the right direction. But hey, if you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe and share with a friend. It really helps the channel out, and make sure to tell me how exactly you want to see these guys painted. I'm probably going to end up painting these guys each a different chapter, so shout out a bunch of them. But I've definitely been flapping my beak enough for one video. So like always, remember to mishmash, kitbash, and paint some fantastic miniatures. And you're gonna. I promise. See ya.